Welcome back to another edition of the Fanatics View Hockey Show. My name is James Lynch. Happy to welcome back on to the program. We've had him on here before, Peter Klein. Nobody knows the Calgary Flames better than this man right here. And we're kind of going team by team every week here on the show. Last week, we talked Columbus Blue Jackets. Week before, I think it was Edmonton with Avery. And I know you know Avery as well, too. It's a small industry. Today we're going to talk all things Calgary Flames. But first off, Peter, how's your summer going? How's everything going?
Yeah, summer's been good. I'm intimidated now that I have to follow up Avery. That there's only one Avery Lewis McDougall, and that's a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. But no, summer out here, it's been all right. It's been a little bit more rainy. You can see by exactly how pale I am that the sun hasn't made too many appearances this summer. But overall, it's been good. But getting that itch to get back into hockey season for sure.
Yeah, and obviously it's kind of that kind of slow moment in the summer right now. We haven't seen a lot of moves or trades. We keep hearing, right, we've heard all summer, oh, this is the week. There's going to be a lot of transactions, but there hasn't been anything basically since, I don't even remember the last trade that was like somewhat notable. The one that always comes to mind for me was the Dakota Joshua trade to Toronto, and that was last month. But, I guess like we spoke right before the draft, or I think maybe even right after the draft with the Flames and everything. What sort of like, as far as how the offseason unfolded for Calgary, was it kind of what you expected? I didn't think we'd see a ton of movement. Maybe there's some thought about doing some selling. We did hear Nazem Kadri's name out there, but how do you sort of rate the offseason in terms of the expectations?
I guess incomplete would be the word, which I guess is probably a grade that you could give most teams in the league, because like you said, there just hasn't been a whole lot that's been done so far. So they haven't done anything really. And yeah, we've heard rumors that maybe Nazem Kadri, he does have a full no move. So if he doesn't want to move, then there isn't a whole lot that's going on there. And he's given, despite countless media reports coming from a certain city out east, that there has been no indication that Nazem Kadri is someone who is looking to change addresses right now. So I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. I am surprised that we are sitting here today and Rasmus Andersson is still a member of the Calgary Flames. And that would be, I think, the biggest thing on the to-do list for Craig Conroy. When he came in as the full-time GM a couple of years ago, it was off of what happened with Johnny Gaudreau not wanting to stay in Calgary, going to the Columbus Blue Jackets, Matthew Tkachuk looking to move on as well, going to the Florida Panthers, and I think that worked pretty well for him, and maybe not so much here, but there was this thought like, okay, we only want guys who want to be here. And while I don't think Rasmus Andersson doesn't want to be in Calgary, I do think that he would rather be somewhere else and rather be playing competitive hockey games. So it is a weird fit, and it's very surprising to me that he hasn't been moved. So they brought in a backup goalie, which works, I guess. That's basically it. So very incomplete for Calgary so far.
Yeah, I'm just looking on the offseason thing here. Ivan Prostavev, I'm butchering his last name. That's the one guy you guys got in, and then lost Dan Vladar. Is that it? Were those the only real moves that you guys made? I know you had some re-signings as well, but it seemed very kind of quiet on that front.
Yeah, that has been it. I don't even know if they brought in anyone new for the American Hockey League. Like it has been quiet as quiet can be out here. And yes, no, the main summer assignment now before we get to training camp is figuring out that pronunciation for old
for sure.
Ivan.
Me included.
Old IVP is what I'm going with right now. But that has been it. This is definitely a team that overachieved last year and is going to be looking at giving opportunities to their young players. And I think they were very cognizant of not blocking the way of anyone else getting in there and taking ice time away from some of the young players that people are excited about.
Getting back to Andersson, though, do you think that there could be a trade before the season starts? Like maybe he gets back into town. There's that face-to-face. Maybe there's more because, obviously players are enjoying their summer. And I'm sure Calgary does not want this looming over their heads going into training camp if there is the possibility of him leaving. Do you see a resolution coming before camp, or do you think this could drag on the season?
I think that this will happen before training camp. I know the Flames are saying that they're fine if he comes into the season as a member of the team. I kind of think they have to say that because you're not going to say, boy, we really need to trade him before training camp and then lose every bit of leverage you have in any trade negotiation. Because this is kind of the last big chip that the Flames have in terms of being able to make a trade and bring in some valuable assets. After that, we talked about it with Kadri, him having a no move, it kind of limits the return and what could possibly happen with that player. So this is the last big one. And so that media posturing, I'm I think it is just that. I would be surprised if we go into training camp and Rasmus Andersson is one of the names on that roster. I just think it gets a little bit messy. It's a lot of distractions that this group doesn't need. And so I think Craig Conroy is aware of that and would want something to happen before everyone makes their way back to town.
And then, the other thing as well is, sort of looking at how they're kind of constructing the team and kind of add the makeup of what's going on into the season. Like, is it safe to say this is kind of a rebuild on the fly because of last year's success? Because I think there was a thought when Conroy came in, this would be a full rebuild, but it seems like they're kind of going away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is still, they will never use this word, but I think it is still a rebuild. And I know the fan base out here, a very vocal part of it, and I think probably a majority as well, was a little frustrated that last year they didn't really pick a side and just, well, let's see what happens with this. And they ended up riding that to the playoffs. And I think this organization has lost a lot of benefit of the doubt when it comes to that because they have been murky middle for forever, right? Like they were never bad enough to draft in the number one spot. The highest draft pick overall in team history is Sam Bennett at 4. But they won like one playoff series in the entire time NBC had the rights in the States. Like this has not been too high or too low with the exception of 04. It has all been in the middle. And so the fan base kind of just wanted a complete teardown. Let's rebuild. Let's get a good draft pick and let's move on and try to build the way we have seen other successful teams be built in the past. And so when you have a team that misses the playoff by 2 games, all of a sudden that frustration comes back and you get all these memories and all these memes of the murky middle and everything there. I would like to remind people that now I guess we are in the last 23 months, the biggest free agent signing the Flames have made was Anthony Mantha. The Flames were, I think, 29th in goals last season. This was a team that was ready to rebuild. It's just the 5'11" 7th-round pick in goal happened to be a Vezina candidate and stole a bunch of games. So I think that this is still a rebuilding team. I think if they really thought that last year was something actionable, you would have seen them be a little bit more aggressive in the free agent market and try to go out and fill a couple of those pieces. I think they are well aware of the hockey team that they have, the limitations that are on this group, and what still is needed. They were in the same province as the kid who's supposed to go number 1 overall all season last year. They know how good he is. He came into their building a few times against the Calgary Hitmen. So I don't think that there are any delusions within the organization that this is a team that can compete for even a 2nd-round spot in the playoffs. I think rebuild is definitely the main course of direction right now.
Well, and do you think that gets accelerated if, let's say, the season starts off and it doesn't go so well and maybe they aren't, close to where they were last year and things aren't having success? And you're right, like Dustin Wolf, as great as it is to know that you have this Vezina caliber goaltender in net, it also kind of gave this false hope. It reminds me of the Canucks. I mean, to be honest, like we had that great season and, with the playoff run, the year before, and then it looks like some of that was fool's gold. Also, I mean, a million other things that happened on top of that with the injuries and Pettersson and Miller. But I think that it certainly changes the course a little bit. Now, here's a question as well, because, we talked about Kadri and obviously he's happy. And I just laugh at the Toronto thing because the whole thing about him leaving Toronto in the first place was like, listen, I'm done with dealing with this media. Like, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I know he's from there, but like, come on, like, why would he want to go back to that? I never thought that was a realistic possibility. But saying that, what is every team looking for right now? It is a second-line center. Kadri, is a first-line center, but he could be a second-line center on another team. I imagine if things do go off the rails that he would maybe be in play just because you'd get a pretty good return, I would think, if that's the direction they are going.
Yeah, it is funny that the 2 teams that he has left behind, Colorado and Toronto, both specifically need a Nazem Kadri right now. Like that is the perfect thing for what is happening out in Colorado and with the Leafs for forever now as well. And I am with you. I think, like, why would he want to go back to Toronto? I do think that there is a little bit of him with the whole telling people where they can kiss him after winning the Stanley Cup, that there. I think he would enjoy going back to Toronto and being the savior, being the one who you guys rode me out of town for Tyson Barrie and a couple of other guys you've never heard of. Now he comes riding back in on the white horse to save the day. I would enjoy that. So I'm assuming he would as well. But I think you're right. And if you look at the Flames schedule to start the season, a tough start is entirely possible. I don't have it in front of me, but I remember going through it and it's like, well, that's just a list of the best teams in the NHL. That's not a schedule. That is just a power ranking of this league. It is a very difficult first month and a bit for the Flames. So there is a real possibility that by November, we are already well aware that this isn't going to be a team that is going to be doing a whole lot. And then I do think that you will have kind of all systems go when it comes to a sell-off. If Rasmus Andersson is still here, I think that certainly speeds up that process. Nazem Kadri could be involved in that. Blake Coleman also is someone who has a no move and would be, I think, very valuable in bringing just boatloads of playoff experience to other teams around the league. You would have some interesting conversations around a Michael Backlund. I know some of those have happened within the fan base already this season. He is someone who kind of feels like they use this at the Dome, and it's a bit of a cliche, but he feels forever a Flame to me. But he is also someone who hasn't really tasted that playoff success, is an incredibly valuable player as a bottom six center, and is someone who everyone who plays with him immediately gets better. So there could be some value in that. So I do think that if the season goes the way that it probably should with how the schedule lays out, we could have a lot of movement coming from Calgary here.
Yeah, that's something to certainly pay attention. We got a bunch of Kadri questions coming in. First off, we got our guy John B, who says, I remember Peter from then 960 when I lived there. Good guest. Yeah, so people who don't know, I mentioned this on the last show. Peter and I were at the UFC Calgary event back in 2018. We got talking and always kept in touch, always followed his work and stuff. So when I started doing the show, he was definitely someone that I thought of right away. Crit says, there's a reason teams with Kadri can't wait to get rid of him. Well, I think Colorado didn't want to get rid of him. In fact, it took them forever to replace him. Maybe Brock Nelson is that answer, but they tried that with, a number of other players. Casey Middlestad didn't really pan out. So yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the narrative. Listen, I know the way things ended in Toronto maybe weren't how people wanted with the penalties and stuff, but centers are very valuable in this league right now. And we're sort of seeing that in the offseason. And that leads into John's other question. Kadri to Winnipeg, I'm grasping. I think that's a fit. I do in terms of they need a second line center and he would be a perfect fit. Now, do they have the assets to get that done? That's another question, because here's the issue we're running into with free agency right now. Every team wants to get better. The only team that really is doing a full-on quote unquote rebuild a little bit is Pittsburgh, right? I mean, things could go south with that goaltending tandem of Tristan Jarry and Arthur Seelovs. I got a lot of questions about that, but in general, you're seeing every team trying to get better. So if Winnipeg was to make that move, they would have to give up something, I would think, unless Calgary is really knowing this season's not going well. I would think Calgary wants a win now piece, but that could also, it depends where they are in the season. So something to keep an eye on. And we have one more question here as well on Twitter. Does Nazem Kadri deserve a chance to play for Team Canada? I don't know. I have to look at kind of the roster and what their construction, how it's being constructed. I would think he could be an option, but I think there is probably other players ahead. Just off the top of my head, I don't have the roster handy on me right now. Has there been any talk about him playing for Team Canada?
It was certainly a notable omission. That's the word.
Omission. Yeah.
Omission. Yeah. It was noted out here that he wasn't at least on the selection camp roster. My first reaction to it is no. I don't think that he would make that team. I didn't watch the group in the Four Nations and think this group's missing a Nazem Kadri. That just never crossed my mind. Again, I think he's an awesome player. And I know that there was a bit of a reputation because he would take some really dumb penalties with the Leafs and get suspended in the playoffs and stuff like that. That dude isn't here anymore. This is a different guy now. You saw that in the playoff run in Colorado, seeing it here every day, and the impact he has had on some of the younger players with the Flames, and even a Jonathan Huberdeau. He has been able to get a lot out of a few guys. So I think that he deserved at least an opportunity to go to the orientation camp or whatever it is called that's happening out here in a couple of weeks. I'm surprised that didn't happen, but I think that if it did, it would have been just a little bit of a, hey, in case 9 guys get the flu while we're in Italy, then maybe we'll give you a call. I don't know how realistic it would have been given the amount of insane talent that this country has down the middle.
Yeah, well said. Crit's still going on about Kadri, but we'll entertain him anyways. Says Colorado got rid of him right after winning the cup despite being a top scorer. They couldn't afford him, was my understanding, right? That's why Calgary outbid them. It wasn't a case of if they would keep him, they would keep him. He was like, look, I just won a cup. This is the best case scenario. I just won a cup. Now people are bidding for my services. I'm not having to worry about getting traded like what happened in Toronto. And Calgary swooped in and they got him. And this, of course, was back when Calgary was, thought to be like a powerhouse. And then that was, before all the sell-offs, right? Kadri came in after Tkachuk got, or before Tkachuk got traded, if I'm not mistaken, right?
So no, it was after. It was.
Oh, it was after. Okay, yeah,
it was all part of the summer of Brad that we were talking.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
that's true.
Yeah, like it was an intense negotiation, and it was close. And then the Flames, what put them over the hump was they, and it was much talked about last season. They attached a first-round pick to Sean Monahan and moved that to Montreal to free up the cap space to come over the top on Colorado's offer. So like the Avalanche, not only did they want him back, they were right there until the Flames freed up a pretty significant amount of cap space to be able to bring him in. So you're not going to get me to say one bad thing about Nazem Kadri. And I know you're not trying to, but like, this is a guy that you win championships with, and whatever has happened here, it has not been his fault. And honestly, like a lot of anything that was close to success from last season after Dustin Wolf, Nazem Kadri was the MVP of this team. So no, that there is no doubt that this is a winning hockey player, and if he gets moved, that team's chances of winning a Stanley Cup go up exponentially.
Do you think the Flames are better off or worse without Brad Treliving?
I think they are better off right now. I think that I know that there is a lot of ownership influence in some of the moves that are made, which is why that there isn't the rebuild this and whatever that. But I do think that Brad has a slightly antiquated way of looking at hockey when you see, okay, we need to make some moves here. Troy Brouwer. Okay, that didn't really work. All right, well, Milan Lucic, and I get that was getting out of a James Neal contract, but he does like the big boys a little bit. And when this team had even a hint of making a push toward a playoff spot, all of a sudden they're trying to become the Boston Bruins of the 2010s and stuff like that. And doing that around Johnny Gaudreau just felt like a weird fit. So I think Craig Conroy, being able to talk to him a lot and just listen to kind of how he views the sport, how he views team building and everything like that, I feel much more comfortable with him having both hands on the wheel right now than with Brad Treliving, who I think is fine. It's just, it wasn't the fit here.
Just a couple other questions here we got from Greg. He says, do the Flames consider moving Jonathan Huberdeau and retaining salary? And would they require an asset in return, or would that be a salary dump? So 3 loaded questions all there in one.
It would be a salary dump for sure. And I think that he has done a great job of reinventing himself, and he has finally turned things around. But to be completely honest, he hasn't sniffed being a $10.5 million player. I don't care how much the cap is going up. It hasn't got there. And so even if you eat half of that contract, it's still $5.25 million a season. And he's barely that. So it's like, it is something I guess you could do eventually, but I think that you are attaching something to that to get it out of the way. And while I can understand maybe you want to do that, where the Flames are at right now, that doesn't really matter. Like we said, Anthony Mantha is the biggest free agent signing of the last 2 years. If they sent Jonathan Huberdeau and every penny of his contract out the door, they would need to sign a couple of guys to get to the cap floor. Like that is where they are at right now. They're not a cap trap team. It may get there at some point, and you may have to do something desperate, but right now, all their best players are on smaller contracts. So it's not something that I think is really going to come up with this team right now.
And that kind of ties into the Athletic article. Just got to quickly mention this. Number 1 worst contract in the league, Jonathan Huberdeau. They value him at 5.1. So you guys are kind of in agreement there. I tend to, obviously he's overpaid. I don't know if it's the worst contract, but I'm trying to think like some of the other contracts they had on here. I'm just trying to have a look. They had Provorov at number 2, which I talked with Troy about this last week. He was on the show. He's a Columbus Blue Jackets guy. Like, he is overpaid, but I think you got to look at the context of defensemen on the free agent market. It was sort of slim pickings here. I don't know if it's the worst contract, but it's not good. It's not good either. What did you? I'm sure you saw this, but what was sort of your reaction? Right, I'm assuming you weren't surprised by this.
No, I wasn't surprised by it. And it is one where, like, in the market, there's a lot of people who are really frustrated by it because you see it. Like, you go to whatever your salary cap tracking website is, and you see that big contract at the top, and then you look at the points. Like, what are we doing here? I do think that there is a little bit of value for what he is doing off of the ice. But yeah, like if you were to just look at the whole scope of the NHL, if it's not number 1, it's on the podium. It is not a good contract. But the Flames, like I said, they are not looking to be competitive right now. And the thing that has impressed me about Huberdeau is that he has had this attention the whole time. Like, he was moved out for a guy who has now gone off to be the best, he has been. He's been the best player on 2 Stanley Cup teams. That's a lot of pressure to put on a guy. And he was moved out as kind of, brought in, as a replacement for a couple of franchise fan favorites. That is not easy to do. And then to struggle right away with it, everything that went on with Daryl being Daryl in the worst ways possible. This was not a fun time. He was getting benched in third periods of games, and he handled it so well and so professionally. There was never anyone thrown under the bus. He was still there to take young players under his wing. And then last year, he reinvented himself, and he still doesn't shoot as much as I think people would like. And he's never going to get to 115 points again, but he turned himself into a little bit more of a front of the net type of a guy. He's not a small dude. So he kind of turned into a bit of a power forward or whatever that is in 2025 in the National Hockey League, and has been able to find at least a bit of success there. So yes, no, if we are talking about dollars per whatever, it's a net loss, but he has at least worked hard enough that if at some point a team wanted him for $5 million, it becomes close to worth it, I think, for them.
And then just last Calgary question we have here. Tell us about Calgary Flames under new construction practice facility.
Yeah, the new arena and everything is coming up soon. Right. They needed it. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about public funding into this, that, or the other thing. And I am fairly confident that the owners of the Calgary Flames could have paid for the whole thing entirely, but they're not. And that is a discussion for another day and another show. But and as far as the Flames go, this thing is still, I believe, on track for a couple years from now. So we're into the final months and years of the Scotiabank Saddle Dome. And along with that is going to come a practice facility and just a whole kind of area around there. I think there is a lot of motivation coming from what Edmonton did with the Ice District and everything like that. But yeah, like I remember the first time I got the assignment to be able to go cover Flames games with the radio, getting to go in and get clips from the from the home locker room, and it's like, man, this is really cool. Like, this is a big moment for me. And you walk through it, they have these big swinging doors that people have seen when the team comes out, and you walk in this hallway and you turn right, and it looked like the locker room that I dressed in Assiniboia, Saskatchewan when I was growing up. And honestly, the one that I grew up in might have been better. Like it was cool. There was a Flames logo on it that you're definitely not supposed to stand on, which is the weirdest thing. And I kind of looked like, that's it. Hey. And so I think getting better facilities and a better practice area, any practice area, is going to be very beneficial to this team. And just when you are bringing guys in for a tour, you don't have to hide anything now. It's just, hey, this is the new facility. This is what you're going to be working in every day. And having that, when you also have the Wranglers, you also have the Hitmen, you have the Roughnecks, that is a very busy building. So to be able to have a couple things around it is going to be, it's going to be great. The skyline's going to look different. I'm going to miss having a little saddle in the front of the skyline, but it is very, very needed out here.
Yeah, well, at least you guys have plans to get a practice facility. In Vancouver, it's still a hot topic. They don't have one. And you know, that's part of the joke, is that Rick Tocchet left because there wasn't a practice facility, right? So, you know, we'll see how that goes up. I wouldn't want to trade Yager, but if this is the last year with all the boys intact, Connor, especially, he's talking about Winnipeg, I could see them dealing Yager for 2C Kadri. What do you think of that trade? Yager.
I think that the Winnipeg Jets would be personally insulted at how quickly I would say yes to that contract, or to that trade. They would be, wait, should we ease up on this a little bit? Because I would prick my finger and sign that in blood. I think that is like, I think very highly of Yager as a player. I think I've made that pretty obvious. And while, again, I like Nazem Kadri here in Calgary, I think the world of him. I think that is, from a goal scoring standpoint, something that this organization would need. So yeah, I would be fine in doing that. And I think before, when you mentioned it, that is a perfect fit for Winnipeg. Like you said, they have needed a second line center for forever. Even the best case scenario for a Jonathan Toews, I don't think gets there. Kadri, he fits the identity of that team. He knows what it's like to play in Canada in January, and he would fix so many things out in Winnipeg. So yes, no, I would be fine with that. Yeah.
John, also some more Flames questions. What do you think the ceiling is on Gradine and I don't know how you say his last name. Perka? Perek. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I got you.
Yeah. The ceiling on Perek does not exist. Like, he has so much ability. He is an incredibly gifted offensive defenseman. And the thing that gives me so much hope for what he could be. Like he came in, played the one game against the Kings at the end of the season, scored a goal. He has upside like you wouldn't believe. He is already that is one of the reasons why people kind of want Rasmus Andersson to get traded, so that kid can get looks in the top 4 on the right side for the Flames. Like he is already penciled in as a superstar. And the thing that makes me feel the most comfortable about him is everyone who I've talked to out in the Ontario Hockey League, a few people who have been able to cover him and watch him pretty closely, is like, he is an incredibly intelligent human being as well. He speed played high school so that he could just focus on hockey. And then like, if there is any problem that he has, he figures it out in 2 weeks. Like he is eat, sleep, breathe hockey. He is so smart to recognize where I need to improve, what I need to do, and everything like that. And so you see how he started last year. It wasn't great offensively, but he was working on his defensive game. He was trying to figure out what he needed to do in that end, and then remembered, hey, I'm kind of just better than everyone here, and scored a bunch of goals at the end. So I think that he is true blue, legitimate number 1 defenseman type of a guy. I am very, very excited for what he could bring to the Calgary Flames as early as next season. For Gradin, I maybe not as bullish necessarily on him as I am for Parekh, but I do think that the next time the Flames are playing deep into the playoffs, Gradin is going to be someone who you notice and is going to be making an impact. So both guys are, I think, big parts of the future of the Flames.
Love it. And then on the flip side of defenseman, Morgan Riley as the Leafs is one of the worst contracts. Yeah, that doesn't age too well, but same sort of thing.
Yeah.
They got to figure out like, the cap and all that. And I think the Leafs are over the cap right now, so they're going to have to trade someone before the season starts. We'll kind of keep tabs on that. Just quickly kind of tying a bow on the Rasmus Andersson thing. I think people feel like Vegas is the obvious choice. Just, I don't know if there's assets that they could trade or whatever, but Vegas needs a defenseman. Like as much as people talk about Mitch Marner, I've been very vocal about this on the show that like, I think Vegas will be better with Marner, takes the pressure off Jack Eichel. That defense, there's some issues there, right? You still got Noah Hannafin. You're very familiar with him. Shea Theodore, but Theodore's a bit banged up from last year. Petrangelo's basically done. That's a pretty big hole to fill. Do you see, like, I know there were some talks with Vegas and Anderson before. Do you think that's ultimately where he ends up, or do you think there's another team that might be a better fit?
I mean, I think that's ultimately where every star player ends up. I don't know how Vegas is going to do it, but I think McDavid, Kaprizov, and Panarin are all going to sign with Vegas in the upcoming offseason. So yeah, like the one thing that gives me pause is, like I said before, like this is the last big trade chip that the Flames have. And Vegas just doesn't have a whole lot in terms of assets. So they can trade negotiate all they want. I know that the Flames or that the Golden Knights don't have their first round pick for the upcoming season because Calgary already has that from the Noah Hannafin trade. And any top prospects that this team has had have been moved out for this, that, or the other thing. So unless it's like an NBA style 3-way trade that we don't see a lot of in the NHL where more assets are coming into Calgary, I just don't see how this is a hockey team that can make that trade for Rasmus Andersson right now. It is, I'm with you. It is absolutely a need. I am a very big fan of Shea Theodore, but like you said, he is a little bit banged up, and there is but so much one defenseman can do. They are a good defensive hockey team, but I think that kind of got them into some trouble when it came to secondary scoring because everyone was trying to defend and no one was secondarily scoring. So I think getting some help on that back end is very important for them. And Rasmus would be a phenomenal fit. I don't know where the assets are coming from to make that trade make sense from a Calgary standpoint.
Yeah, and they'd have to clear a clear salary as well to make that work too. And I wonder, is Mark Stone someone? We've seen them kind of just throw guys under the bus. Doesn't matter. Hey, Marc-Andre Fleury, see you later. You know what I mean? Like that's just how they are as an organization. And so I wouldn't put anything past Vegas. John mentions here that Dallas might be in on Rasmus as well. See, with Dallas, they have prospects. They're actually probably one of the best drafted teams over the years. If you look at some of the picks they've got even late, like I believe Stankoven was a late pick, or is Wyatt Johnson, I can't remember, one of them was a later pick. So they've done quite well there. They have the assets to do it. Dallas is looking to get over the hump. So I don't know. We'll kind of keep tabs on that, but certainly interested to see what happens. So I've kind of asked all my guests this, especially ones that are covering the West. Are there any teams that stand out to you that could regress this year? The teams that we might not see in the playoffs. The obvious one for me, and I talked about this last week, I think LA's taken a step back. I don't think Ken Holland used that cap space very well. I'm sure you've seen years of that with Edmonton as well too, with Ken Holland's work. But LA is one for me I could see popping off, and I also. I do wonder with Winnipeg losing Ehlers for basically nothing, that's got to be a little bit of a hit. I think Hellebuck's getting played too much. Do you have any teams, like if a Calgary does get in or another team gets in, like are there any teams that kind of stand out to you that you think could regress this year?
I'm with you on the LA thing. I thought it started great bringing Kuzmenko back, but then the CC contract and the Dumoulin contract, like that, there's not one world that makes any sense at all. So I think that they could absolutely take a step back. I think Winnipeg is interesting. They have so much talent on that team, even without Ehlers. And Ehlers is a talent loss, but I don't think they were even he was getting top 6 minutes, obviously, but they weren't utilizing him in a way that I think was maximizing that. So the version of Nick Ehlers that is going to pop up in Carolina, I don't think Winnipeg lost that one that much. But the thing that would concern me there is that division is stupid good with Colorado and Dallas. Like you said, they have a lot of young assets that they are looking to make moves with, and that they have the goalie that is figured out. It is going to sound very bitter Calgary of me. I think Edmonton takes at least a bit of a step back here this year.
Oh, listen, preaching to the choir here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because Avery was on, it's funny you mentioned Avery. He was on Sportsnet 650, actually on my way home last week. I was listening to him on there, and the host was just going on and on about the goaltending. I felt bad for him because he's kind of look, they got a new goaltending coach, but I don't think they've addressed the goaltending, and I think that's still an issue. And you've got this, this McDavid thing. They got to figure this out. And I think Edmonton too, but it could be one of those situations again where they have every year they have a losing streak and then somehow they go on a run again. Just, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
And this is 2 off seasons in a row that I haven't liked what they've done. And obviously last year went pretty well for them until it didn't. But I'm with you on the goaltending thing. It's still not great. It's still not a situation I would trust. And again, they lost a lot of depth pieces. And while people love the Sopranos memes with Andrew Mangiapane, this guy, he had...
Yeah, you know better than anyone.
Yeah, he had his most productive seasons with Calgary when he was on a line with Backlund and Frolik, who everyone had productive seasons with them, or Backlund and Coleman later on. And so when he went to any other line, it just wasn't the same. You add that with him being a bit of a smaller dude, he had a shoulder injury, and he hasn't shot the puck as much, which is going to be required when you try to put the puck in the net. So I think expecting him to fill in any kind of a role of a depth scoring option or anything like that, I feel is kind of whistling past the graveyard a little bit there. I think they did great to, all due respect to the Vancouver side of this, I think they did great to get out of Evander Kane and to be able to get actually something back for Victor Arvidsson. Still, I don't understand how that was able to happen in the year of our hockey gods 2025. So they've made some smart moves, but I don't think talent in, talent out, they've been able to do an effective job with it at all.
By the way, have you seen the replies when that trade happened with Evander Kane to the Canucks? Just nothing but we don't want him, all this, it was just crazy. I get it. The Canucks need more of a, that pissed me off last year. This when you guys had Zadorov, when the Canucks had Zadorov for a little period of time, the one thing I loved about him is he would stick up for teammates. There was none of that last year. Brock Besser gets hit by Tanner Jeannot, no pushback. Quinn Hughes basically thrown around by every team because they're we're going to injure this guy and make sure he can't continue. No pushback. And you'll get that with Kane. But with that as well, you're going to get the Kane that does stupid things, that won't handshake with Florida, all that other stuff. So, you hope it works out. But it's just funny you bring that up because I remember as soon as when I saw it, I was like, what? No salary retained? Nothing, just a pick? It's basically they traded Puck Colson for Kane, if you think about it, because they ended up getting a 4th pick for that as well. So, but getting back to Edmonton just quickly, they did lose a lot of pieces, Perry, Arvidsson, Skinner. These are not game-changing guys, but it's just how is this team improved drastically with Andrew Mangiapane? You know what I mean? And
right.
I don't know. And I just I don't were they ever in on John Gibson? I wonder that too. Why wouldn't you at least try something different? I think Skinner, the sense I get, even talking to Avery as well, is that they do like Skinner and they'll probably give him a long leash. I could see them getting rid of Pickard and going with a different backup. I think that's more likely, but I don't know. We'll see. But we share the same sentiment with Edmonton, where it's every time there's some sort of losing streak, you just get that little snicker or whatever. It's all good. I can relate to that as well. Okay, last question, then we'll get you out of here, Peter. Really appreciate it. He says, do you think the Oilers trade McDavid during the regular season? No, they're not trading McDavid. Well, no, everything we're hearing is he's going to sign a short-term deal, right? I think you're hearing the same thing I am.
Yeah. It's not going to be a big 8-year contract or anything like that. It's going to be a little bit shorter to continue to try to use the basketball model, right? LeBron James signed very few long-term deals. It was a lot of 1-and-1s with player options in there to keep maximizing while the salary cap was going up. I don't think it's going to be that drastic with McDavid, but it's going to be short-term contracts. I can't imagine a world where Edmonton trades Connor McDavid during the season. They could be 0-50 by the trade deadline and probably not do that with him. I can't. A, you're not getting fair value back in that trade. B, to be the organization that traded Gretzky and McDavid would be something, and not something that you would want to be associated with. So I would be stunned if that was a trade that happened at any point now.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, they've done a lot to keep McDavid happy. They've kept Draisaitl. They brought in Jeff Jackson, who was his former agent, right? They have Knobloch as their coach, who coached McDavid. Like, they've done everything to make him happy. So I just don't think like now's we obviously that end of year presser, there was a little bit of that, like, hey, you guys, basically saying you guys got to do something here. Like, I'm not going to stick around forever, but yeah, I don't see them trading him. Before we go, I take it I will not see you in Vancouver for the UFC in October. I'm assuming that's a little too far for you.
Yes, yeah, unless something changes drastically.
The main event, though, I don't know if you saw it yesterday. They announced it.
Yeah. A lot of the announcements for that.
It's actually a good card.
A lot of very interesting fights on there. I'm happy to see that, and I know that there is a lot of Canadian representation on it, but there were a few of those where they were just coming into Canada and be like, "Hey, isn't it great we are here? Okay, who's on the card? Don't worry about that. How great is it that we are here?" So I'm happy that it is a pretty solid card that is coming out to Vancouver. I would love to head out there, but I
you're going to be knee deep in hockey and everything else, and the travel as well. And the Vancouver hotels aren't cheap. I can attest to that as well. But no, I was telling you kind of before we started this, like, I thought for sure they were going to Calgary this year, and the reason I thought that was, okay, they went to Edmonton last year. They were just in Seattle, which is like 3 hours away. So I figured, okay, you got your West Coast fix here. We went to Seattle. And then they came back, and like, I'm not complaining. Obviously, I live here. It'll be nice to go to the press conference and come home. But that did surprise me a bit, because they put on, I always talk about that card in Calgary because that was one of the best fight nights I think they've ever had. Like, Poirier, Alvarez, you look at the names on there, Ioane and Jacek, Jose Aldo fought Jeremy Stevens. Like, this was back when the UFC, and granted, we are getting a good one for Vancouver, but you look at a lot of the fight nights now, they're not like, they're like PVR and watch the next day thing. That's usually what I say. So at least Vancouver's getting a good card, but that Calgary card in particular, that was a awesome event. Islam Makhachev was on the undercard, if I'm not mistaken, too.
I believe you're right.
Johnson.
Yes. Yeah. So no, it was great. I remember the one thing that always stands out is being cage side when Jose Aldo hit a body kick on Jeremy Stevens, and I looked 5 times to make sure that the commission didn't let him bring a bat in there. That was the loudest sounding anything I have heard ever. But no, I thought everything went well with the show here, and doing the fill-in stuff that I do at 960 now still. We had we've had some UFC people on, and they said just flat out, we're coming back to Calgary before the new arena is in. We're doing at least one more at the Saddle Dome. And so I think a lot of people assumed that was going to be now. And so when Vancouver got that one, it was a little bit surprising out here for sure. Because it seemed like everything went well. It is funny that they had one of the worst pay-per-views of all time with UFC 149 out here. And then they were like, we'll make it up to Calgary. And it took like 7 years to do it. So it's apparently life as a UFC person in Calgary is just, we'll come back eventually. And if you wait a long time for eventually.
Yeah. Well, at least Montreal got a card this year because they had been waiting for forever. So that doesn't matter. Peter, you're the best. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll definitely get you back on as the season sort of chugs on. But I know you've been doing some baseball. You mentioned the fill-in stuff on Sportsnet. Anything you got coming up before we go, let our audience know?
Yeah, very busy around these parts these days. I have my own podcast called Couch Potato Diary. A lot of sport like wrestling, UFC, hockey, football, all over the place there. I fill in on Sportsnet 960 at least once a week around these parts. So best place to find everything with me is on social media. I am at Primetime Klein. And this was a lot of fun. Whenever you want me, I'd love to come back. Always enjoy these chats.
Appreciate it. There we go. Best Twitter username out there.